Hello again and welcome back to the North Star Kitchen. I'm Papa D, and today in the kitchen we have a special guest, my son Josh. Josh, do you want to tell the folks at home what we're going to be making today?
Sure. Today we are going to be making homemade garlic and herb ciabatta bread.
Great. Well, tonight we're actually going to be making the biga, and then tomorrow we'll actually be making the bread.
Hey Dad?
Yeah?
What's biga?
So, good question. Biga is a type of pre-ferment that we're going to be making about 12 to 14 hours before we make the bread. And what it does is it gives the pre-ferment a chance to break down some of the starches in advance, gives it kind of a head start. And what that does is it gives more complexity to the body of the bread, in the flavor and then the texture.
Okay.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, in order to make the biga, we're going to need 3 simple ingredients. We're going to need a half a teaspoon of active dry yeast. We're going to need a cup of all-purpose flour, and we're going to need a half a cup of warm, not hot, water.
Why warm water?
Well, good question, Josh. The reason being is that the yeast is actually a living organism, and while it's dry, it's in its dormant state. So when we add warm water to the yeast, it comes alive, okay? And that's what rises the bread and makes bread rise. You know how bread rises, right? That's what makes that do that. If the water were too hot, believe it or not, it'll actually kill the yeast, and you won't get as much of a rise out of the bread. Okay? So let's go ahead, Josh. If you'll do the honors and go ahead and mix in a half a teaspoon of the active dry yeast. Okay, and to that we're going to add the water. Go ahead and pour the water right in there. And then if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and grab that whisk and just stir that up until the yeast kind of dissolves, all right? Let me take that for you, thank you. And while you're stirring that, I'm going to go ahead and add the flour, okay? And what we're looking for is just for the flour to absorb this moisture, okay? Go ahead and whisk that all together, if you would, please. Okay. Good. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and cover that and set it aside for 12 to 14 hours, and we'll be back when that's ready. All right, so we're back, and it is 14 hours later, and the biga is ready to go. And you can tell the biga is ready to go because of the air bubbles that have formed. It's got a lumpy sort of a texture there. So we're ready to add that into the mix. All right, Josh, why don't you tell us what other ingredients we have here in addition to the biga?
Okay. Today we are also going to be using 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 cups and 2 tablespoons of warm water, and 4 cups of flour.
Perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to give you the mixing bowl here.
Okay.
And if you can go ahead and pour the water into the mixing bowl. Okay, make sure you don't spill any. Good. And let's go ahead and get that yeast in there, and we'll go ahead and get that started. And let's go ahead and just take a mixing spoon, and we're going to go ahead and just dissolve that.
Okay.
Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to take the biga, and carefully I'm going to scrape along the edges. You can see how stringy it looks. Okay? That's exactly what we want. And we're going to go ahead and mix that right into the water and yeast combination. It does not need to be 100% dissolved into the water. We just want to break it up into these like blobs. All right. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and start to pour in some of the flour. And we're going to mix that in until it becomes a very loose, wet dough. So keep mixing that all together. Okay. It's going to get harder and harder to stir. And we're going to go ahead and add in the teaspoon of salt. And what that'll do is that'll help to retard the yeast a little bit. It'll stop it from growing a little bit. We're all set with the dough here. It's all been mixed. We are going to let it sit for about 15 or 20 minutes to let the flour absorb the rest of the moisture here. And what we'll end up with is a very wet dough. So we'll see you back here in about 15 or 20 minutes. So we've let our dough sit for 20 minutes, so it's ready to go. In the meantime, we attached the dough hook attachment to our stand mixer. We are going to mix that at a medium speed for 18 minutes, periodically scraping down the sides. About a third of the way through, you should start to see that the dough is going to start pulling away from the edges, and that's what you're looking for. If it doesn't, because every stand mixer is a little bit different, you may need to notch the speed up a little bit so it does start to do that. Meanwhile, while we're mixing that, Josh, do you want to tell the folks what we're going to be adding in?
We're going to be adding in
a tablespoon
of garlic and herb.
Seasoning, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can get that right at the store,
Mm-hmm.
pre-made garlic and herb seasoning.
And then we're going to do a tablespoon
Yep.
of basil.
Perfect. All right. We'll lower that down in there. You can see how wet that really is. It's really not like a traditional dough. I'm going to notch that up.
Do you want me to lock it?
Go ahead and mix it in. All right, so that's been going on medium speed for 18 minutes, and it's still a wet dough, and that's okay. It's going to be a wet dough. You want to unlock me, Josh? So we're going to lift that out here, and we'll scrape down. I'm just going to scrape off the dough hook here, back into the bowl. And now we're going to begin the proofing stage of the dough. And what I do that helps my dough proof a little faster is I will actually do, I'll put a warm water in the bottom of the sink. We'll take this off. We're going to cover it and put that in the bath of warm water in the sink. I'm going to let that rise for about an hour, hour and a half, or until it's about tripled in bulk. And then we will come back and shape our rolls and bake them. So we've let our dough rise for, it was a little over an hour here, but it's tripled in bulk, and as you can see, it's definitely to the top. Be careful when you're moving it because you'll decompress the dough, and all of those air bubbles, those nice air masses that are in the middle of ciabatta bread that make it really chewy will actually collapse on itself. So you want to be very careful handling the dough at this point. So what we're going to do is, Josh, if you would very carefully remove the cover from there, and you'll see that that will compress the dough. That's okay, but we have to work quickly at that point. See how it's nice and stringy, and that's what you want. Go ahead and pull that right off from there. Good. And you can set that in the sink. We are going to very heavily flour our workstation. Okay. And we are going to turn out the dough onto the workstation. And all I'm doing is just scraping along the top. And if you can see how stringy that dough looks, that is the consistency that you want for a good ciabatta bread. All right, good. It's going to be a very sticky dough. So in order to work with it, we're going to need to dust it with some flour. So Josh, if you wouldn't mind dusting the entire top. Yep, spread it right over there. Good. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to divide this right in half. So Josh, yeah, go for it. Right up the middle, if you would, please. Right in the middle. Yep, good. Just like that. Perfect. Now, Josh, if you want to get some flour on your hands here. If you want to take your dough, and I will take my dough. Okay, we're just going to separate this. Okay, we're just going to make it into a loaf.
Okay, it's very sticky.
It is very sticky. Now we have a couple of pieces of parchment paper here. We'll take our dough and put it in the parchment paper, shape it into a loaf, and what we're going to do is we're going to take, and I actually have some binder clips here to kind of help it hold its shape. So we'll fold it over once and flip it. The same thing here. I'm going to put that in the pan. Good. Just like that. Some clips. I think your loaf is going to look better than mine.
Okay, so we've let the dough rest for 40 minutes. And while that was happening, we preheated the oven for 475 degrees.
Right. So let's go ahead and take these binder clips off because we don't want to bake these with the binder clips on.
Right.
Okay. Let's just take a peek at it and let's see what we're looking at. That is exactly what you want the dough to look like before it goes into the oven. You see how it has, you can see the air bubbles right just under the surface. That's what we're looking for. And they're both very good. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get them into the oven. We're going to bake these for 25 minutes, and then we'll be back when those are done. So we've let that bake for 25 minutes. We've removed it from the oven and put it onto wire cooling racks here. You want to let them cool completely before you cut into them and before you serve them. Now we did loaves today. You could do rolls, just how you cut them up and shape them before they have that second proof. But we did some loaves and they look delicious, don't you think?
Yes, they do.
Absolutely. And there you have it. I want to say thank you to our special guest today, Josh, for joining me in the kitchen and helping us to make some ciabatta bread. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for letting me come in and help.
I'm Papa D.
I'm Josh.
Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you back soon.